Lowell City Council to order. Please rise for the council prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Dakota.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. The chair would like to recognize Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received a call this evening, and I would just like to offer a moment of silence in Docking Chamber for Ruth Gates, the mother of General Manager Operator of the Songus Arena, Craig Gates, the loving wife for 64 years of Alden Gates. We offer our sympathies to the family. I know that most of us here didn't know Mrs. Gates per se personally, but we felt as though we knew her quite many years through her son, Craig. And I just want to offer our sympathies to the family for her passing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mercia. If my colleagues wouldn't mind, I also have a moment of silence in Docking Chambers for Julie A. Gagnon, wife of Andre Gagnon. Actually, they were married for 61 years. Lived here in Lowell, and she actually was involved in AG Hardware Company. She and Andre had 4 sons, and Julie and her husband 13 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And she was just a wonderful person. And when I was talking with Mr. Gagnon at the wake, he indicated that they were best friends, which says an awful lot. So I'd like to offer Julie Gagnon's name as well. A moment of silence in Docking Chambers. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize Councilor Dakota.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you all for my being gracious while I was absent last week. I appreciate it. I'd like to just offer a moment of silence for my father, who died on Sunday, Larry Traub. He is left by 5 children, 12 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren, and a wife of just under 2 years. He is a man of great faith and loved everyone that he met, so thank you.
You're welcome. And on behalf of my colleagues, we'd like to offer our sincere condolences. Thank you. Please rise. Thank you. First item on the agenda this evening, accept the minutes of January 5th for acceptance by Council Mercia, seconded by Council Bill Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, vote. Thank you. Under unfinished business, we have the order in City Council to vacate, discontinue, and abandon certain public interest rights and easements in a portion of Lincoln Parkway in the city of Lowell. We have a motion to accept.
Move for approval.
Motion by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Murphy. Any further discussion on the order? All those in favor? Or is this a roll call, Mr. Clerk? Roll call?
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. The third item is in City Council order to discontinue as a public way and to abandon certain public interest rights and easements in a portion of Tilden Street North, also known as Martin Luther King Jr. Way in the city of Lowell. Motion by Councilor Bill Martin, second by Councilor Rodney Elliott. Any discussion? All those in favor, I'm sorry, roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Under City Manager, communication from City Manager, responses to council motions, requests. Do we have any discussion items? Council Caulfield, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe a month and a half ago, I brought in a motion for the law department, building department to come back with information about a particular building on Back Central Street adjacent to the Portuguese Club. And I contacted the solicitor today. And is there any more news on that particular issue, Madam Solicitor?
Excuse me, could I ask for a suspension to discuss this item? It's not on the agenda. Suspension by
Yes.
Council Caulfield, seconded by Council Elliott. All those in favor of the suspension, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Thank you. Madam Solicitor?
Apparently, in discussions with the building department, there has been a impediment in moving forward, and apparently one of the owners of the building is deceased, and they've been trying to locate the lawful owners. After a discussion with the law department this afternoon, the building department is going to go forward. They're going to inspect the property within the next 24 hours. The property in the past has been inspected, but apparently there haven't been inspections for as long as 4 or 5 years. They'll move forward with the inspection, and if there's a determination made that the property is unsafe, then the proper orders are going to go out, and we'll do the whatever notification periods are required to satisfy that.
So Madam Solicitor, you're saying if the property isn't fit for human habitation, it could be deemed for demolition?
That's correct.
Okay. And what's the proper procedure once that is found out that we can?
Well, there's different types of demolition procedures that the building department can follow. That's something that, in consultation with the law department, there'll be a determination made as to what particular procedure will be utilized in this case, particularly given the facts of any question of ownership.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr.
Any other? Councilor Rita Mercia?
Thank you. This is a good example of red tape. I don't know what to say about this except the fact that sporadically across the city, let's take Centerville, for example, which later on you'll hear from my colleague to the right, talk about trying to bring neighborhood groups and get them involved in certain aspects of their neighborhood. And I find the number one problem in this city is that maybe a building has a fire, or maybe someone ends up in a nursing home, and yet the property is like a eyesore that just takes the rest of the street down, and yet our hands seem to be so tied time and time again. I wonder how long that Councilor Caulfield's building, and I was involved with that building as well, where it's someone dies and it just sits there forever and ever and adds an eyesore to the neighborhood, whether it be Centerville or Back Central. And there has to be a way where this council can reshore the law or reset it so that, we can give adequate time. I mean, 2 years, 10 years, 9 years, that's ridiculous. That's an eyesore that brings a neighborhood down. I know that and I feel bad that people go in nursing homes and their property is left vacant, but there must be a way that we can, do something about it instead of kids breaking into it or the water pipes are breaking and water's going all over the neighborhood. And this is going on time and time again, and we're frustrated in the neighborhoods to see this happen time and time again. I know foreclosures are another issue, and it's in the family, it's tied up in litigation, and it just drags a street down. And I don't know how we can be on the same page to say, we gave you an adequate amount of time, either your family or someone shores up the property and keeps it clean, or you do something with it. It's like we almost have to move to demolish in order to people to set a fire under their feet to get on track and make it a better street, a better neighborhood. You let this go, and then the next property goes, and the next, and then you got a neighborhood in disrepair. And And it's frustrating, and it's frustrating for the neighborhood people that work so hard to make their neighborhood great. So I don't know, I don't say it's our fault, I'm not forcing blame anywhere, but we need to do something to address this issue as Councilor Caulfield brings it up. I'm sorry.
Madam Solicitor?
I was just going to say, I couldn't agree with you more. And after receiving Councilor Caulfield's question today on the status, I contacted the building department, and after having a discussion, that's why I recommended to move forward. And we know it's a duplex. We know the ownership of one half of that property. That's not in dispute. And there are, I think, avenues that we can pursue in terms of getting published notice out for the other half. But by the same token, since we have matters of public safety with properties like this, we should be utilizing whatever we can to move as quickly as possible.
That's right.
And that's really what we're looking to do. And the same goes with properties that are in foreclosure, properties that are in tax title. We're currently in the process, and we'll be reporting soon. Different things, different steps that can be taken that might not have been taken in the past, but things that are going to move things along and get rid of a lot of the deadlock that has occurred over the years.
I think
So,
we're a
I agree.
compassionate government, but, you know, enough is enough, and they've lived with it for too long, but I'm sorry, I won't say anymore, but
Thank you. Council Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, this is a very unique situation. The building is owned by two different parties. One party wants to demolish and pay for the demolition. The other party, there's various people throughout the country, they can't locate those people, and some are in nursing homes and so forth. But I'm very happy with the response from the solicitor. I'm very happy that we can move forward and hopefully take care of this problem and just move on. It's been going on, as Councilor Mercier has indicated, for years. And I think we're finally coming to a solution to the problem. Thank you.
Thank
you, Madam
Thank you.
Solicitor.
Any other discussion while we're under suspension? If not, we'll move back to the regular agenda. We do have 2 or 3 other communications from the city manager, if anybody has any comments. If not, accept a motion to accept a communication from the city manager, place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next item, communication from the city manager, resignation and appointment to solid waste committee. We have a letter from, actually, we'll take up the resignation first from Greg Susi. And Mr. Manager, he acknowledges the letter. This letter acknowledges the receipt of your letter in which you resign as a member of the Solid Waste and Recycling Advisory Committee. Your resignation is accepted. I am filing a resignation and acceptance thereof with the city clerk as required by law, and also forwarding copies as a communication to the Lowell City Council. Steve Lowell appreciates your service as a member of the Solid Waste and Recycling Advisory Committee. On its behalf, I extend thanks. Very truly yours, Bernard F. Flint, City Manager. Accept the communication placed on file by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Dakota. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Next item would be to appoint a successor. Dear Mayor Milanazzo, members of the City Council, pursuant to the authority vested in me as City Manager under the City Solid Waste and Recycling Ordinance, Chapter 270, Section 13, it is with pleasure that I am appointing the following person to the Solid Waste and Recycling Advisory Committee to fill the unexpired term of Greg Susi, expiring October 31st, 2011, or such time thereafter until a successor is appointed and qualified. Beverly Schultz, 145 Sanders Avenue, Lowell, Mass. Since confirmation by the City Council is not required for this appointment, this letter is notification of such appointment. I have attached a letter of interest for your review. I would be happy to answer any inquiry you may have concerning this appointment. Very truly yours, Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Accept the communication placed on file by City Councilor William Martin, seconded by City Councilor Rodney Elliott. Any discussion on the
Yes.
communication? Councilor
Thank you,
Mercier?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to quote the second paragraph of the person that the manager is appointing to this position, because it agrees with what my philosophy is. And she says, some things I would like to explore are more city-supported free cycle type events, et cetera, to develop more than disposal options for citizens to part with things no longer needed. That's a key issue, and, you know, she's right in tune with what I think. we should offer that at some point during the year with things that I try to get my hacksaw and break things up in so many pieces, and sometimes I just can't do it, just to fit it in that recycling thing. So if we can just look into that, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Point well taken. Thank you, Council Mercia. Any further discussion? Accept the communication placed on file, signify by saying aye. Opposed, vote. Thank you. Next item is vote appropriation transfer, $12,660 Cemetery Department. Vote in City Council order to complete the repair of 2 monuments and fencing at the Edson Cemetery for the City of Lowell Cemetery Department, ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows: that the amount of $12,660 be transferred from Sale of Lots Fund number 17232 miscellaneous charges, account number 049141577-573400. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Flint, City Manager. Second reading by title. Vote in City Council, order to complete the repair of 2 monuments and fencing at the Edson Cemetery for the City of Lowell Cemetery Department. Motion.
Move for approval.
Motion by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Broderick. Any further discussion? Councilor Mendonça.
Just a question, is this damage due to an accident, and will the city be receiving payment for that?
Counselor, this is a motor vehicle accident. Claim has already been made to the owner's insurance. When we get reimbursement, the monies will go back to backfill in the sale of lot funds.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Nazzo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Vote in City Council authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to accept a gift of $500 from Comcast to be used for costs and expenses associated with the holiday reception at the Senior Center. Whereas Comcast wishes to donate a gift of $500 to be used toward the holiday reception at the Senior Center, and whereas the City of Lowell desires to accept the gift of said $500 to be used toward the holiday reception, now therefore be it voted that the city manager be and he is hereby authorized in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a gift of $500 to be used for costs and expenses associated with the holiday reception that was held on December 13, 2009 at the Senior Center pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A. Be it further voted that we, the members of the City Council of the City of Lowell, jointly and severally, do hereby commend and officially extend the gratitude of the City of Lowell to Comcast for their generosity displayed through their donation of the aforesaid funds to the City of Lowell. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to accept a gift of $500 from Comcast to be used for costs and expenses associated with the holiday reception at the Senior Center. Motion by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Dakota. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I just briefly,
Councilor Caulfield.
I want to thank Comcast. They've been doing this for years, and on December 13th, there were 220 people who enjoyed themselves immensely at that Christmas reception. And I'd like to thank Ralph Fennell and everyone who contributed to the entertainment. It was a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.
As well as yourself, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Caulfield, yes, thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a deed to Bernier Street Extension in the City of Lowell for Women in Transition Incorporated doing business as Alternative House. Whereas Women in Transition Incorporated doing business as Alternative House desires to convey a parcel of land to the City of Lowell in order to be accepted by the city as a public way, and whereas the City of Lowell is desirous of accepting the deed of said property from said Women in Transition Incorporated, doing business as Alternative House, which deed was recorded at North Middlesex Registry of Deeds, certificate of title number 38036, Land Registration Office in Book 193, page 71, and whereas an indemnity agreement between the City of Lowell and Women in Transition DBA Alternative House has been signed indemnifying the city of any potential claim for damages. Now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows: that the city manager be and is hereby authorized in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a deed from Women in Transition Incorporated, DBA Alternative House, of land situate Bernier Street Extension in the City of Lowell, which deed was recorded at Middlesex North District Registry of Deeds, certificate of title number 38036, Land Registration Office in Book 193, page 71. A copy of said deed and applicable plan are annexed hereto. Be it further voted that upon conveyance, a certified copy of this vote shall be duly recorded at the Registry of Deeds by the grantor, and such recording shall be marginally referenced on the aforementioned deed, recorded in certificate of title number 38036, Land Registration Office in Book 193, page 71, all at the expense of the grantor. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a deed to Bernier Street Extension in the City of Lowell from Women in Transition Incorporated, DBA Alternative House. Any discussion? Motion to accept, motion to approve by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
In City Council vote, approving the filing of legislation which will ban texting while operating a moving motor vehicle within the city limits and impose a civil automobile law violation in the City of Lowell. Whereas the City of Lowell desires, in the interest of safety, to ban texting while operating a moving motor vehicle within city limits and impose a civil automobile law violation in the City of Lowell, and whereas, in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, a special act of the legislature must be obtained to authorize the City of Lowell to ban texting while operating a moving motor vehicle within the city limits and impose a civil automobile law violation in the City of Lowell, and whereas the City of Lowell is petitioning the General Court for passage of legislation banning texting while operating a moving motor vehicle in the City of Lowell, and whereas a majority vote of approval by the Lowell City Council is required for the filing of this petition, now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows: that the City Council of the City of Lowell, by a majority vote, hereby authorizes and approves the filing of special legislation to read as follows: an act banning texting while operating a motor vehicle within city limits and impose a civil automobile law violation in the City of Lowell. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor of waiving the full reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Vote, thank you. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, approving the filing of legislation which will ban texting while operating a moving motor vehicle within the city limits and impose a civil automobile law violation in the City of Lowell. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in response to the motion I filed last week, and I spoke at some length then, so I have very little to say now, other than I was able to get a hold of the home rule petition filed by the City of Boston, forwarded on to the solicitor. Appreciate the prompt action on this, and, you know, it continues to be in the news, continues to be debated in the legislature. There was a story this week that Boston's home rule petition was likely to pass, and there continues to be negotiations over various parts of a statewide ban. So I think it's in our interest to move ahead with this, and you know, hopefully the statewide ban takes effect, but if not, we should do what we can here within the city limits.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Motion by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Broderick to approve as presented. Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. In City Council vote that pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31D, the City of Lowell, the City Council of the City of Lowell, consents to incur liability and make expenditures in excess of available appropriations for snow and ice removal in the current fiscal year. Whereas the City of Lowell totally encumbered the line item for services from its snow and ice removal appropriation for fiscal year 2010, and whereas it is anticipated that additional snow and ice removal services will be required in this fiscal year, And whereas the approval of expenditures in excess of available appropriations for snow and ice removal by the city manager and the city council is required under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31D, and whereas the city manager has approved such expenditures, now therefore be it voted by the city council of the city of Lowell as follows: that pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31D, the City Council of the City of Lowell hereby approves expenditures for snow and ice removal in excess of the available appropriation for such purpose during the current fiscal year. Be it further voted that said expenditures shall be certified to the Board of Assessors and included in the next annual tax rate. There's no objection, second reading by title. In City Council, vote that pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31D, the City Council of the City of Lowell consents to incur liability and make expenditures in excess of available appropriations for snow and ice removal in the current fiscal year. Any discussion, Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mayor, to the manager, what was, can you tell us what the end balance was for the snow and ice deficit from last year? I know that we had gotten rid of
approximately $600,000.
about 600,000. Okay. Can you also tell us exactly what we've spent to date on the, I don't know, the 4 or 5?
Exactly.
Well, if you can, exactly is good. But I know that bills go out. And,
We're still below the amount that we appropriated. We're still below the $565,000 that we appropriated, but of course it's January 12th.
It is January, exactly.
Right.
So we're at about, we've spent about 250,000.
I probably
date?
more than that.
Okay.
It is an amount that, and I know that Councilor Murphy and I have talked about this. It is an account that we really should be budgeting at a higher level, but this is something that's generally done in municipalities that they budget a lower amount because they know that they can go over that. We increased the snow and ice amount a couple of years ago, and it really should be increased a little bit each year, or maybe a little bit more than a little each year, to get more in line with what we typically spend. You want to be careful you don't actually appropriate over what you need, because then that requires you then to come back the next year and appropriate that same level if you want to go over it, if there's a particularly bad winter. But it's a more prudent course of action that we really need to look at to try to work in over a period of time, is to get it closer to that level.
So last year, was it approximately 2.8 million? Is that what it was? Because we had a
About
deficit of about 2.3, and
about
there was
2
approximately 500,000 in there.
2.6 million, I think it was.
Okay. And to date, we've spent,
I haven't seen the numbers recently, but it's probably somewhere in the 400s.
what is an average per storm? I want to say last year, we discussed around 30,000.
Really, it's really difficult to say. I mean, this past storm went for 48 hours. The one that we had this past weekend, we didn't send out as many pieces of equipment probably, but you can have a tremendous amount of snow within a 4 or 5 hour period that you have to have all the equipment out. It really varies on a per storm basis. A better sense as to what it is on a per inch or
Right,
something.
it depends upon
Right.
the snow. Okay, can you just get us an update as to where we are at this point
Sure.
in this fiscal year with the amount that we spent, just to keep an eye on it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Elliott. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Living in New England is you can certainly predict you're going to have snow. But municipalities like Lowell can't predict when that snow is going to come. We had, T.J. McCarthy told me we had 17 storms last year. We've already had 4 this year. The only difference is all of those 4 storms were on a weekend, and that's more costly. So it's hard to put a finger on the cost,
Thank you. Any further discussion on the vote to incur liability for snow and ice removal treatment? Hearing none, roll call?
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. It being 7 o'clock, I'd like to move into the public hearing scheduled for 7. In City Council order to discontinue as a public way and to abandon certain public interest rights and easements in a portion of Edward Street in the city of Lowell. I'd like to open up the public hearing to all of those who wish to speak in favor. And would you please give us your name and address, please?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is James Flood. I'm an attorney with offices at 549 Rogers Street in Lowell, and I represent Kaufman Realty, Inc. We're before you tonight requesting a conditional abandon and discontinuance of a portion of Edward Street as it presently exists to allow my client to proceed further with its proposed development of a Walgreens drugstore on Middlesex Street. I know we've got some new members of the council that weren't here, so I just thought I'd give a little bit of a history. Back in the fall of 2008, the city issued a request for proposal for disposition of a city-owned parcel located at 1769 Middlesex Street. It's a parcel of vacant land consisting of approximately 13,900 square feet. It's rectangular. It's a rectangular piece, and it's located on the left side of the proposed development. I handed out some small plans, and if you look at, I think it's the one for the new subdivision, it's to the left. It's a rectangular piece on the left side of the property. The city set a minimum bid of $350,000 with a response date of January 13, 2009. Kaufman Realty did submit a bid of $350,000 for the land to be combined, and it would be combined with other land that they presently had under purchase and sale agreement to proceed with the development. The bid was conditional on the construction of the proposed Walgreens, and the plan submitted with the bid made specific reference to the relocation of Edward Street. On March 24th, 2009, the City Council accepted my client's bid, and a purchase and sale agreement was ultimately executed. In accordance with the purchase and sale agreement, my client began its due diligence. The first step was that we did appear before the City of Lowell Conservation Commission to determine whether there were any wetland issues on the site. The Conservation Commission, after hearings, issued a negative determination of applicability in September of 2009, indicating that there were no wetlands issues on the site. The property is zoned RR, which is a regional retail district, and a drugstore is a permitted use on the zone. There are, however, additional permits that are necessary for this project to proceed further. One would be site plan approval from the planning board, subdivision approval from the planning board because it would be necessary to establish the new Edward Street. We would need a special permit from the Board of Appeals for a drive-through, and we might need a variance from the Board of Appeals depending on the width of the driveway on the final plan. And then, of course, we're in front of you tonight for an abandonment and relocation of a portion of Edward Street. My clients, after we obtained our approval from the Conservation Commission, my clients met with representatives of the City of Lowell Planning Department to discuss the sequence of permitting. The Planning Department, after consultation with the Law Department, advised us that the first step would be to petition the City of Lowell for the conditional abandonment and discontinuance so that we can show site control in order to proceed in front of the Planning Board. Without site control, we cannot present a petition for the subdivision or the site plan approval. Since a portion of the land in our plan is Edward Street, it's necessary for a conditional abandonment. As you can see from the proposed order, I think the city did a very good job. The abandonment would be conditioned upon the subdivision plan related to the development being approved by the planning board, that the relocated Edward Street, as approved by the planning board, be built to a binder course and be approved by the city engineer. Appropriate bonding be in place to provide and ensure that the work on the roadway would be completed, and then a sign-off by the city manager that all of the conditions as put forth in the order have been met before any abandonment would take place. So it's really a procedural step in order to allow us to proceed further with the planning board. I mean, my client is well aware that there are concerns within the neighborhood as to the traffic that may be caused by the development. And these issues, I'm sure, will be discussed in detail before the planning board. There's a lot of work that has to be done from this point forward, and my client is willing to work closely with the planning department and with the neighborhood to arrive at a plan that is beneficial to both the city and the neighborhood. A representative has already met with Jeff Gomes, the transportation engineer for the city, and presented plans for mitigation, and Mr. Gomes has issued a letter. I don't know whether you people have had the benefit of that letter, but I do have copies that we can pass out for your files. But Mr. Gomes, in his letter, indicated that the improvements proposed will mitigate the traffic caused by the development and minimize the impact on the neighborhood. And they've made a commitment to provide these mitigation steps. This is a large economic development for the city that will create jobs, bring additional taxes to the city, along with a $350,000 purchase price. I work closely with the City of Lowell Planning Department and the Centralville Neighborhood Association on the planning of the CVS drugstore on the corner of Bridge Street and the VFW highway, and as far as I know, there have been no problems with traffic in that area. I am more than willing to continue to work with the Highlands Neighborhood Association and the Planning Department on this plan, and I'm sure that we can come up with a plan that will be beneficial to everybody. So I urge this board to approve this conditional abandonment so that we can proceed further. And I have representatives of Kaufman Realty with me tonight, plus our engineer, to answer any questions if anybody has any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Flood. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Yes, sir. Your name and address, please.
My name is Robert Massey. I reside at 19 Edward Street. And I just wish to let you people know that the Kaufman people have been excellent people to work with. They've been very sincere and honest with us. And that, as far as I'm concerned, this project is going to be good for the city of Lowell. It'll probably end up being, from what I understand, a $2 million project, which will be taxed at an industrial rate, which is double the rate of the taxation in the area now. And there has been a traffic study done that I've seen before that said that the traffic would be less after the Kaufman brothers get done doing their infrastructure and the lights, new lights at the Rock Bridge, and the new street further down away from the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Anyone else want to speak in favor? Name and address, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Lowell City Council, Mr. Manager, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Ullman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. I wish to be recorded in favor of this. This is, as the Attorney Flood said, it is procedural vote. This at least gets the issue to the planning board where all the pros and cons of this development can be debated and discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anyone else want to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition, come to the podium, please, and state your name and address. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Diane Poole, 24 Cornell Street. And while I do understand about the economic stimulus that this will provide for the city of Lowell, having lived on my street for 21 years, I see it as whittling away of the neighborhood itself. And the repositioning of Edward Street would now be basically directly across from Cornell Street, and which means I'm going to have more traffic, and there's also going to be more traffic on Middlesex Street. I've always been in opposition to Walgreens because of the traffic. We have an awful lot of traffic already. I don't see the traffic as going to be made better by putting another commercial property in here. But I'm probably outnumbered, but feel I should speak my mind anyway. I just don't think it's fair that this neighborhood has to suffer. We've had enough traffic problems, and this just isn't right.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Again, name and address, please.
Scott Hume, 40 Columbia Street, and I lived in the neighborhood for 35, 40 years. I noted the neighborhood has declined in more than one way. Old trees been knocked down, not replanted, but the traffic is the main thing I have complained about. I feel there'll be more traffic coming down Columbia Street because they'll be trying to sneak through and go around. And that's all I have to say, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Name and address, please.
Yes, Renee Hill, 50 Putnam Ave. I'm co-chair of the Highlands Neighborhood Association with Nancy Judge. And I'm here to represent the neighborhood. They're opposed to this overall, feeling that their streets are going to be used as cut-through streets to this intersection. There is a major problem at this intersection. We have met with the party that's interested in putting in this commercial enterprise. And we didn't come to an agreement that we were completely resolved to the fact that they're going to fix the traffic problem. That was the main thrust of this commercial enterprise, is to fix that main. We weren't completely convinced of it, that they were going to do that with this this building. So that's the main, and I think the neighborhoods are very concerned about the growth, that it's going to bring in more traffic. I think it will, and that their streets are going to be made cut-throughs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? That part of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that we're not voting on this issue tonight, that it has to, by law, be put in the city clerk's office for 7 days, and we will be voting on it next week. I know that this is a first step in one of many. It's not just about a conditional abandonment of a public way, but it's a little bit more than that. And I want to alert my new colleagues here that this is one of those votes that is not an easy vote, because we know both sides of this issue. We know that there's good on both sides, and we know that there's a concern on both sides, not to say that it's bad, but cut-throughs and things like that. So no matter which way we vote, we do hurt someone. So I'm not sitting here tonight to say that it's going to be easy. This is, you look at a council meeting and say, oh, I can do that. You can do that until you're here, and then you have to make that certain type of vote that put your feet to the fire. And so it's not an easy vote, but it is just a procedural step that will move Walgreens project forward a bit more. It's one of those votes that's not easy. It's not a clear-cut vote as well in the planning board. We did get a notice, and it said that it was divided in favor, 3-4, and 2 against. It's not a clear-cut unanimous decision, so right then from that vote that there's many problems and concerns. And this is a vote that will not close up Edward Street completely. They will relocate it. They will move it 150 feet to the east, opposite Cornell Street. There will still be access to the soccer field. There will be additional parking provided for the people who will take part in the soccer field activities. There will also be a new entrance and additional parking. I don't know what the vote will be next week, and maybe I don't know if I'm supposed to say how I feel about it, but what I see in front of me here is a vacant, useless parcel of city property at 45.1 Edward Street that is probably worthless, probably deadlocked somewhere, but we're going to be selling it for we did sell it for $350,000, money that would be added to the general fund. This property, if we do see this step to move it forward, will be a commercial taxed property. It would be added to our tax base. And I know the people involved in this. I know Attorney Flood, who has been upfront, above and beyond. I know that there's a parcel of property in the back, and these people do not want to sell. They're in a flooded zone area, and I'm understanding that their property will be lifted on stilts, something that the people that live there could never afford to do. I'm not speaking for this company, I'm speaking to myself as to why I would vote next week either to support it or not support it. Just as this commercial property exists there, as it does exist on two main corners in that immediate area. Right across the street is a piece of commercial property soliciting prospective interesting parties to the availability of 5 units of commercial space. And if there is an interest there, they'll build a strip mall to accommodate these parties. Why? Because it's zoned for that. People live in neighborhoods. I lived in a particular street. There was cut through every now and then, and we made it a one-way street in the next street because there was a very bad hill that could have created a traffic situation. So if it's okay to do that across the street, why is it not okay to do it for this corner over there? And right on the next corner on Westford and Wood Street is another offer of 3+ acres for sale, promoting commercial opportunities. So you got it right around, and how can you offer it in this corner and say, we can't have it here? Are we stopping traffic from emanating from these projects as well? I didn't just decide that, oh, I'm going to support it and the heck with the neighborhood. I feel for the neighborhood, but I have to look at the overall picture. My duty is for the benefit of the entire city. And in this particular situation, it seems like how I vote next week would be for the good of the entire city. Are we then going to stop projects entirely and eliminate the addition of more commercial tax base? I hope that we don't do that. People who live on gateway thoroughfares must expect these type of happenings. This is part of living within a main street. I know that, you know, I'm trying to do the best that I can with this vote. I know we're not going to vote on it, but this is a process to make Walgreens happen. Personally, I don't even know why they'd want to build on this side. It would be easier for all of us if they took that building and put it across the bridge into Pawtucketville. Those poor buggers have no pharmacy in God's country. I don't know why we don't have it there, but we don't. I just wish that it would have been an easier vote if it was there. I think that people don't understand, but people build these buildings like that across from another competitor because they're in line with the traffic. That I don't think that I would come from South Lowell and say, you know what, I'm going to Walgreens tonight, right on the corner of Middlesex and Wood Street. I think I want to get into that traffic. But if I happen to be going by, I think maybe I'd pull over and say, gee, you know what, I need something. I'm going right in there. So it's like sporadic, you know, opportunities right there. That's why they put these buildings in the line of traffic, because the opportunity is right there. Having said that, I will vote accordingly next week because I feel that it's for the good of the city. I sympathize with the neighbors. If we can help in any way to maybe make your street a one-way so there isn't a cut-through, maybe we can make it the opposite way. I'm sure we'll do everything possible that we can to make the right things happen. That's all I have to add to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mercia. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, you know, we're all sympathetic to neighbors that have development going on near where they live. It's not always the easiest thing, and I think we're particularly, at least I am, and I know Councilor Mercia mentioned this, sensitive to the fact folks came down here tonight, and this isn't going to be voted tonight. It's an arcane process, I think, by rule, that these votes to abandon streets get delayed a week. We had 2 of them tonight, earlier, that were delayed from last week. And I think the reason for that is actually for the benefit and protection of additional neighbors. It gives you almost 2 chances to come down and make your voice heard. So I think I apologize for that there's not going to be a a vote on this issue tonight. But it's not that anybody's, like, I think, looking to duck this vote. I mean, if possible, I think we'd like to have it done and get it over with after one hearing. In any event, this issue has been to the council before. There was considerable debate at that time whether or not to issue the RFP. There was a strong vote in favor of moving ahead to sell this land, and so I don't think there should be too many surprises about where this vote is going to end up, but it does need to be held next week. I do appreciate the comments of all the people who came down here tonight, and as Councilor Mercier said, the city is always willing to do what we can to mitigate problems around development. I'm sure we'll do that here if this in fact does go forward. So I'll reserve any further comments for next week, but do want people to know that their voice was heard coming down to speak this week.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Any other councilors who would like to be heard at this point? Councilor Mendonça?
Yeah, I'd have to agree that this is going to be a difficult vote. We have residents of the city on one side of the street that appear to be in favor of the project. Of course, they may be selling their properties in order to do so, and we have people on the other side of Middlesex Street that are very concerned about traffic in what is already a very busy intersection. And certainly, even if there were improvements for this project, more will be needed in the future to address that Wood Street and Middlesex Street intersection. This is obviously the beginning of what could be still a long process, and that even after if we were to vote to abandon this, that would just be the beginning for them going before all their boards. All the residents would once again have an opportunity to speak at public hearings, et cetera, to try and make this more amenable to the residents that are going to remain behind. I mean, there's things in here like a left-hand turn that would go into the new Edward Street. This is obviously, it's hard to tell just from looking at this drawing as to what impact it will have, but it seems to be narrowing Middlesex Street at a point where it needs to be 2 lanes even further back so that the traffic has some place to go through the light later rather than having only a single lane at that point. I did see an aerial view that someone showed me a picture of that. You can easily see that on an afternoon the traffic will back up beyond this location. I do have a question through the mayor. It was stated before that this was already zoned retail. I believe that's true along Middlesex Street. Is that also true for the other properties back on Edward Street? Anyone know?
Attorney Flood?
Yeah, all of the properties are the whole area.
So,
Yep.
so no rezoning is necessary?
No rezoning necessary, no, it's all
retail,
property
right?
zoned, right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll read up more on the traffic study that I hadn't seen before and get whatever information. And if residents want to contact me with what they feel they'd like to see happen at this intersection, feel free, and we'll be voting on next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor Milanazzo. I know it's been a long process, particularly I see some folks behind me from Edward Street, Mr. LeBlanc, and some other residents, Mr. Massey. I'm down there all the time because I'm on the board of directors for Lowell Youth Soccer Association, and down at the field all the time. I supported sending the RFP out, and it is a tough issue. I think it was mentioned twice already. I attended neighborhood meetings up at the Daily School. I think it was a hot August or July evening. The residents are concerned in that neighborhood about the cut-through traffic. I mean, anybody that lives in Pawtuckettville or in that particular neighborhood know that it's gridlock. Anywhere from 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock any given time during the year. I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, I look at Walgreens and say, you know, it's economic development, it's new revenue, we need new revenue. On the other hand, there are some traffic issues. I think there are some significant traffic issues that some can be mitigated. I know I spoke and met with Mr. Kaufman. They're willing to do some signalization improvements at that intersection. I think around $200,000 that we don't have. That's one of the worst traffic intersections in the state. I want to say it's either number 4 or number 8. But the bottom line is it's a 2-lane bridge. There's approximately 30,000 cars that traverse that bridge every day. And I think the residents in that neighborhood are just, they're at their wits' end. They can't go anywhere in the evening or in the morning going over. It's a traffic nightmare for people in Pawtucketville. So I guess my question is, before we move this forward, what is the plans for maybe making some of the roads a one-way or not? Has that been discussed at this point rather than approving this? Because I think after this vote, it is a procedural course of action that once it does come back and we vote. My understanding, I spoke to members of the planning board, and I am concerned that this was not 5-0. Not that it has to be 5-0, but members are concerned that not enough information was given to them at the planning board meeting. And after this, I mean, it's unless Walgreens needs a variance, there's little we can do in terms of traffic improvements. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm concerned to take this vote without knowing exactly, the traffic studies. I haven't seen any traffic studies. What I do know is, Mr. Kaufman did indicate there's going to be 1,300 more cars. It's a 24-hour drive-through, and some of these cars probably are going to come from existing trips to whether it's CVS or Rite Aid or others. But there have to be more. More cars have to be coming to the neighborhood. So I'm wondering what the plan is for the particular neighborhood, those streets that are going to be affected by this, first of all, and secondly, there's Lowell Youth Soccer has probably close to 50 games. I mean, there's hundreds, maybe thousands, a couple of thousand people going down to that soccer field every Saturday and sometimes Sunday. What is the plan for, is Edward Street going to be, the new Edward Street going to be completed before they close the existing Edward Street? I don't understand how that works. So I think there are some challenges that we need to address before we move forward on this. But I don't know if Mr. Bakey or Mr. Flood have any answers to these questions. I'd probably like to ask you a question after Mr. Flood on the variance issue, because after some of these other issues are settled, subdivision approval and the special permit, we did adopt a zoning ordinance that is very specific, and once they meet the requirements, they don't really need much more. Sorry, there was a lot of questions there, but why don't we address the traffic and road issues at this point?
Well, I'll speak to the question you had about the traffic calming on the adjacent streets. And there's an ongoing conversation that the city's transportation engineer is having with the proponents and their transportation engineers, which one of the things in the letter that you all now have copies of that Attorney Flood provided to you this evening, one of the things that was indicated by our transportation engineers would be a requirement going through the permitting process was that appropriate traffic calming measures would be taken on Cornell and Columbia Streets. And when it comes to traffic calming, it's very important that the residents of the streets are part of the conversation as to what the final solution is, because traffic calming is by definition an inconvenience. It's intended to inconvenience so that it's hard for people to use it as a cut-through, but it also has the effect of potentially inconveniencing the residents. So we want to make sure that whatever method is chosen, if one is chosen and is deemed appropriate, it is something that the residents are in approval of. And traffic calming can be anything from changing street travel patterns to one-way streets and so forth, to more aggressive measures like speed bumps and chicanes and things of that nature that change the physical nature of the roadway. And ultimately, that's going to be an ongoing conversation. The planning board still has two major sort of approval processes with this project. One is site plan review, and the other is the subdivision approval for the project. And ultimately, it is, in my opinion, the most appropriate place for the detailed discussion of the traffic calming measures is in association with those review and approval processes. Should ultimately the planning board wish to approve, the approval should be conditional on resolving the traffic calming. I don't personally feel that that issue is necessarily germane to the discussion of whether or not the council feels it's appropriate to conditionally abandon this street, but that's certainly the council's prerogative to take a look at that if they wish. The other question I believe you asked was, which I can address, is whether the relocated Edwards Street that is proposed would still provide adequate access to the soccer fields, and the answer to that is yes. In fact, it perhaps could be argued that it might be improved access to the soccer fields. As someone who's also a parent of 2 participants in Lowell Youth Soccer, I know the existing arrangement isn't ideal. And I believe that the requirement of the abandonment vote before you is one of the conditions that it has, is that the new street be in place to the binder course, which would allow adequate usage of the street to the satisfaction of the city engineer before the abandonment of the existing street actually would take effect. So if the council wishes to adopt the abandonment vote that's before you this evening, one of the conditions would frankly require that there be access to the soccer fields in place on the new street before the abandonment would actually take place officially. And then further, the applicants are going to be required to post a bond for completing the road beyond the binder course, which typically the completion isn't done until all the construction traffic is off of the road, so you're not destroying the finished road afterward. And that's a sort of standard convention of subdivision approval, which again is another step in this process that would be before the planning board at a later date. In terms of I think your other questions are more appropriately directed at Attorney Flood for the proponent.
You mentioned in your remarks, Mr. Flood, you may need a variance or you may not.
It depends on the actual width of the driveway within the site. If it's over 25 feet, you need a variance. If not, it's permitted. And I haven't seen the final plan yet, so.
Okay.
But do you know how wide the driveway's going to be? Probably not. But we would need a special permit for the drive-through.
Okay. I know that in the past, maybe in the summer, there were going to be some traffic studies done or studies have been done on vehicle traffic. Could we, at some point between now and next week, get a copy of that study and get a look at the conclusions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, actually, no. Unless my colleagues suspend the rules. Pardon me?
Yes, I'll
Motion to
suspend the
suspend.
rules
Okay,
to let
motion
them
to suspend
speak.
the rules by Councilor Rita Mercia, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Approach. Thank you.
Sorry. Just a thought about the traffic calming. I remember calling the police a couple of years ago because of the traffic problems we had, and they said a speed bump could not be put in because it was a residential area. So, I mean, that's one thing. But I guess one of the questions I have also is on Edward Street right now. Why can't that be reconfigured as the entrance to Walgreens? Why can't it remain as such, take down the houses? I mean, I'm all for soccer and everything, I really am, but it seems to me there's a lot more concern about getting the soccer field ready than making the residents of my neighborhood happy. Why can't we use Edward Street and reconfigure the plan?
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
I hope that wasn't the impression that we're more interested in the soccer field and the residents. That wasn't my intent. I just know that there are hundreds of cars that go down there, so I want to make sure that there was an existing, entrance and exit for these cars, so it doesn't become more of a impediment to the neighborhood. So if that's how it was interpreted, that's not my point. I think it's just as important to get those traffic calming measures for people that are affected by it now. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else at this point? Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with my colleagues. This is a difficult issue whenever you have a neighborhood people come out and in opposition with their concerns and their fears. And I do appreciate the residents coming out this evening and voicing their concerns and participating in the process. And this is just another step in the process. you know, we can talk about economic development, but I think everyone here on the council would agree that no amount of money is going to be worth destroying a neighborhood. And so I know that that is our first and foremost priority here. But I think, yeah, as was mentioned earlier, before I raise my, after I raise my hand, I might repeat a few things from Mr. Backey. Is the proper jurisdiction here is for a lot of this discussion is really with the planning board for site plan review. And that's a whole nother process that has to be fleshed out, and we have to have some faith in our planning board that they'll do the right thing and hold the developer, who's through his attorney seems to be very cooperative in trying to do the right thing, and hold their feet to the fire to do the mitigation that's necessary. And I can speak from my years on the planning board is that mitigation is one thing, but we can't expect the developer to come in and solve the problems that already exist. And I think that's something we need to be mindful of as well, is that, you know, whatever they're going to add, you know, they have to mitigate, and they have to make sure, and hopefully things will be better. If this does go forward, hopefully things will be better when they're done. But I don't think it's realistic, nor is it the standard to hold them to that they're going to make everything better over there. I think we all know there's a huge existing problem that, in my opinion, our concern is that we don't want this to add to it. And I think that's where we have to come from and draw a line here. And Mr. Mayor, if I could ask the city manager maybe to have the traffic engineer. There are some new councilors. I had the benefit of being on the neighborhood subcommittee, I think is where it came in a year and a half ago. And we've had a few meetings on this and gone through the plans in detail. But I'm wondering if maybe we could have the traffic engineer come in next week for questions from any of the councilors, if that's appropriate. Mr. Mayor, I'll leave that up to you. Because I think that there's conflicting information and maybe points of view on this in terms of what's going to happen and what's going to be added and what the effects are. So I think that would be helpful for me anyway to clarify in making a final determination. But you know, we're going to have the site plan review and the subdivision approval we're going to need from the planning board, and so there's much more of a process here, and I would encourage the residents, if this does go forward from next week's vote, to please continue to participate, because this is how your voice is going to be heard, and this is how we, you know, if it does go forward, the best plan will come forward and be produced is through the participation and people sticking with this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Broderick. Council Caulfield.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. This is not a difficult vote. As far as I'm concerned, it's an easy vote. If you care about neighborhoods at all, this is an easy vote. In all due respect to Attorney Flood, Kaufman Realty, Mr. Massey, and to all respect to my neighbors who have spoken. Mr. Mayor, Wood and Middlesex Street is considered by the state of Massachusetts as the second worst intersection in the state, not in Lowell, in the state. 28,000 cars or vehicles traverse through that intersection every single day. 14,000 outbound, 14,000 inbound. What neighborhoods are being affected by this traffic congestion? Not just Middlesex Village, Pawtuckaville as well, and Centerville. Traffic at 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, Mr. Mayor, till 7:30 p.m., is backed up from the Virgoropolis Bridge. That's the highest bridge by the Humane Society, over the Rourke Bridge every day. The traffic is backed up from Drum Hill to over the Rourke Bridge every single day. And what's the reason for that? You have an antiquated two-lane bridge, but worse than that, Mr. Mayor, you have antiquated secondary roads. If you built a 6-lane bridge over the Merrimack River, it wouldn't make an ounce of difference. The plan to build a Walgreens drugstore at the foot of the Rourke Bridge, why would they want to build it there? As Councilor Rita Mercier indicated, it's traffic. It's traffic. It's to promote your business. We already have 2 qualified drugstores in that neighborhood, Rite Aid and CVS. Why do they want to build another drugstore there? Competition. If that drugstore is built there, it's going to make the traffic conditions that are there now even worse. Even worse. The plan to build a Walgreens drugstore is 3,000 square feet larger than the one on Bridge Street, the CVS store. It's 1/3 of an acre in size, Mr. Mayor, 15,000 square feet. And I must say, I have all due respect for traffic engineer Jeff Gomes, but he and Mandrake the magician couldn't straighten out the traffic problems there now. Never mind after the drugstore is built. And to say that there's going to be traffic improvements, they're going to add an extra lane, you could add 5 more lanes. If the Rourke Bridge is totally covered with cars, where are they going? Where are they going? They're not going to go over the Merrimack River. Furthermore, Mr. Mayor, a red flag was raised Monday evening by the Lowell Planning Board. Every councilor knows what that vote was. The vote was 3-2. Joel Fischette, who lives in Pawtuckaville, and Stephen Gendron, who lives in Belvedere, their reasons for voting against that was the traffic congestion that exists there now. And Council Mercy indicated about a proposed building a commercial business on Ward and Webster Street and the proposed strip mall on Middlesex Street. The council has no jurisdiction over those 2 businesses, but we do with this one. That's the difference. The developers claim they will improve the intersection and traffic will flow much easier once the drugstore is built. I have a bridge to sell you. Anyone want to buy it? This plan is ill-advised and will create much frustration, not only in the Middlesex Village neighborhood, but in Pawtuckaville as well. I personally like to thank Gerald Fischette and Stephen Gendron for taking into consideration the quality of life and the traffic concerns in that neighborhood. Has anyone traveled down that road at 3 in the afternoon till 7:30 at night? Then I am not lying. The traffic is backed up for miles. Put a 15,000 square foot drugstore there. How are people going to get into the drugstore and how are they going to get out? The drugstore on Bridge Street, there's one way in and there's another way out. It was well planned, but they don't have that flexibility with this drugstore. They don't have it. And Mr. Mayor, if everyone in my neighborhood and in the Highlands came down to speak in opposition, the line would still be at the microphone. As you well know, Mr. Mayor, it was brought up last night at the Highlands meeting, and we both refrained from speaking on it because we can't. I am pro-business, always have been, when that business makes common sense. Less than 9/10 of a mile, Mr. Mayor, I can back out of my driveway and go to a Walgreens drugstore on Plain and Chancery Street. Or I can walk to the 2 neighborhood drugstores in my neighborhood. The people in Dracut said no to the Walgreens drugstore on Mammoth and Lakeview Avenue. This council should take a long, hard look at this vote. Because a neighborhood right now has traffic problems like you can't believe. This drugstore is built, you're going to add to those problems. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Any further discussion? Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. I'd just like to request, in addition to a more detailed traffic study, that we have any environmental impact review that may have been conducted in coming up with this plan. And thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure they were actually at that point. I'll defer it to Attorney Flood.
We have no environmental report. We do have the decision of the Conservation Commission. If you'd like that, it's been recorded.
Well, I understand that, you know, there's some concerns there, I think, at the end of the road with flooding. And I didn't know, I figured there must have been some kind of environmental impact review in order to, there hasn't been?
No, we did present our plans to the Conservation Commission. They found no problems with any wetlands there.
Okay.
So I can provide you with a copy of that.
Well, no, I mean, that pretty much ends the discussion there, but I think at least a more detailed traffic study.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Dakota?
Thank you very much. I would like to say I do think this is in fact a very difficult vote, because it is our charge as councilors to balance economic development with quality of life issues, and that's kind of what we're talking about now. I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I know that this was considered a procedural vote. Is it possible to have that site plan review done first and then bring this back? It can happen that way. Okay.
It's
So
not.
we're voting on the information that we have.
That's
Okay,
correct,
thank you.
yes. Thank you. Councilor Mendonça?
Just kind of a follow-up question on this traffic mitigation. How much weight should I give to this is kind of the question I have in my mind, is because they've done this traffic study, is anyone really bound to follow this, or is this going to be other things that are going to come out of the process during when they go before the planning board?
Mr. Baggy?
Ultimately, they will be bound by whatever conditions the planning board places on its approval, if indeed the planning board does approve the project with respect to traffic. And typically, what happens with projects of this nature is there are many different city officials who review the project on behalf of the city and provide comment to the planning board, and the planning board typically takes into consideration those comments and typically translates those comments either into things that the developer changes on the approved plan before it's approved, or become things that are conditions of an approval. And very likely the traffic package would end up being one of those two things, given the observation that's already been made that the planning board has sort of multiple perspectives on this project. It is difficult for me to imagine an approval without conditions regarding these kinds of traffic mitigation issues.
Thank you. I have been informed by the city clerk and the city solicitor that we should, before we move to refer to the city clerk for 7 days, that we should move to receive the planning board report and place that on file. Moved by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Again, we would now, assuming the discussion is over for this evening, look for a motion to refer to the city clerk and hold for 1 week, and we will be back here next Tuesday. Moved by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Broderick. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. And I would encourage the neighbors to come back next Tuesday, and with permission of the council, if you have questions or you want to participate, I'm sure we'll suspend the rules and let you do that. Thank you. Moving back to the agenda. In City Council, vote authorizing the city manager to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Dracut and Joseph R. Vachon individually and as president and treasurer of JRV Homes Incorporated relative to property located at 200 and 220 18th Street, Dracut, Mass. Whereas JRV Homes Incorporated Vashon currently owns property located at 200 and 220 18th Street, Drake, Mass. And whereas Vashon desires to construct a single-family home on the property at 200 18th Street and on the property at 220 18th Street, Drake, Mass. And whereas there is currently no water, sewer, or other utilities accessible to either lot, and whereas both lots are approximate to the city line, Vashon has requested that the City of Lowell provide the necessary water, sewer, and other services required for construction purposes, all at Vashon's expense, and whereas the city is willing to provide said necessary services pursuant to the terms and conditions of the intermunicipal agreement, and applicable departments have approved such. Now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the city manager be and hereby is authorized to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Drake and Joseph R. Vashon individually and as president and treasurer of J.R. Homes Incorporated relative to property located at 200, 220 18th Street, Drake, Mass. For the purpose of providing municipal services to the properties. Said intermunicipal agreement shall be in the form or substantially the form attached hereto. Be it further voted that any cost of recording the intermunicipal agreement and related plans shall be at the grantee expense. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Drake and Joseph R. Vashon individually and as president and treasurer of JRV Homes Incorporated relative to property located at 200 and 220 18th Street, Drake, Mass. It's the wish of the council. Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager or to the solicitor, whoever can answer this question, is this the first time we've had such a request come before the city council?
No, these have come before in the past as well.
What's the standard procedure for applying for a connection such as that's before us this evening? How do you start this process? How do you go about this procedure?
I believe this one was actually started here with the city council, is my recollection, about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, or thereabouts. I could be off a little bit on the timing of that, but it was brought forward as a petition. It was referred to the law department, then worked with the applicable city departments to review the matter. And then it's based upon their recommendation and approvals, it's brought back. We have to go through the process of an intermunicipal agreement with the other community that's involved, in this case, the town of Drake. The specifics of this are that there are the town of Drake does not have any lines in this area because it's sort of separate from the remainder of the town.
Is that like one of the conditions of approval is because if we're on the borderline of, let's say, Tingsboro, and there is no way to hook it up so that the closest place would be Lowell, would that be one of the requirements?
If there's no line, if for instance there was a town of Drake line going by this house, this property right now, we would we would deny it.
So I want to know if we could get a report as to how many requests have we had in the past 10 years, but if that's too long, maybe the past 5 years, because I've been on the council 14 years, and I don't remember this happening that often. So if you could just refresh my memory at one of the requests that I have, and the second is, have we ever denied anybody? Would we have a report on how many we've denied?
We can put a report together for you on that, Council.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, that this developer is going to pay for all the construction costs?
That's correct.
Up to our line?
Right.
Right. And the city will certainly garner revenue from this, won't they?
We will bill off to the town of Drake, and the town of Drake will collect the money from the developer.
Is the contract with Drake less expensive than it is with Lowell?
We will bill off, we will bill off the full amount that's due to the city.
Okay, I just don't want to see a resident from Lowell paying more than somebody from Drake. I do believe, too, I think the Lowell Sun reported maybe 2 months ago, there's 234 buildings or facilities that are tied into the Lowell sewer line.
Correct.
I don't have a problem with that, so I'll support this. And I do remember one other incident it might have been Stephen Massey.
It was.
That we agreed, because he was in a situation where he wanted to build a home, and there was no sewer lines available for him. So, but I think they're very, very few.
That's right. And that one actually hasn't been executed yet because we haven't been able to come to an
But there
agreement
hasn't
yet.
been that many that has come before this
No,
council.
I was thinking the same one. That Massey one, I believe, on Totman Road. But there are 200 some odd that go way back, oftentimes to when the surrounding communities didn't have sewer. Some in Dracut, there weren't lines over in Tewksbury in an area. There's a couple over in Chelmsford that were tied in prior to the town of Chelmsford having sewer.
And that was an interesting question from Council Rita Mercier. Has anyone ever been denied? And I'd like to have the answer to that, too. So, thank you.
We have denied people.
Thank you. Councilman Mendoza?
Yes, actually, since I raised my hand, it's been partially answered. I was going to bring up that, and the agreement appears to say that it's Dracut or the community that will be doing the metering and the billing collections, and then they'll just send the money over to Lowell.
That's correct. And it's done for that reason. It's done for that in that way because the town of Dracut has the ability to lien the property. If we were billing directly, we would not have the ability to lien that property if they did not pay.
And our employees don't have to go out to the property and deal with them. Dracut, in this case, will deal with them. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Council Murphy, then Council Martin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager. I had a question about the billing. If the rates rise here in Lowell, does the Dracut property owner also see rates rise?
Each year, we make adjustments on what we bill on or anytime we make an adjustment in the Lowell rate, that affects any of the other surrounding communities that pay in to the
And
city.
I guess where, there are projected deficits in the wastewater and water enterprise funds, that if the rates don't rise to meet those projected deficits, do we then have a situation where, you have to draw upon the general fund to be able to, meet that deficit? And will this Dracut property owner be paying that additional impact that, a Lowell residents would pay under that?
No, actually, if in a case like that, and we're some years away from running into a deficit in that, because of the capital improvements being made in the city's system, if it goes off the general fund, no, because that would be tax dollars that would be used at that time. So that's why it's essential that you, not only in this particular case, but all of our intermunicipal agreements, when we raise the rates in those surrounding communities go up as well, and then they pay their share towards the operation of the plant.
So in effect, you could have that partially subsidized by Lowell taxpayers if down the road.
If the rates aren't adjusted to pay to keep the enterprise solvent, then it could be the taxpayers that are paying that. Yes. Keep in mind that from the standpoint of, there's a couple of aspects to this. One is that the plant was built as a regional facility with grant money from the EPA. So we have to make some capacity available to those surrounding communities, which we've done. The other aspect of it is that if done properly, the rates are effectively, it is an economy of scale, that if we do this as a region, then the overall cost of the plant, the cost for the city is reduced somewhat because other people are helping to pay for that actual cost. Okay. Right. But it's a good point that if the rates aren't adjusted accordingly to pay for the capital, then it does run the risk of the taxpayers paying for something that other communities use, or in fact, some of the nonprofits in the community that may use and pay a fee, the sewer rate, but they don't pay any taxes, then they would be actually subsidized as well.
Okay, thank you.
Council Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to comment on the question about how frequently this occurs. I mean, it's been 10 years for me now, too, and I don't remember very many of these, but I do remember some. The ones that have been previously mentioned, I think more recently we had one on Clark Road, a water line that I think actually Attorney Flood was involved in some sort of commercial development out there. So it does happen. In my memory, it usually does come in by petition. I can't remember any of them ever not being approved at the council level, but you know, like many things that come in via petition, I think they get referred to the manager, and not all of them make it this far. So that'd be interesting to see the report and see how far back some of these go. But you know, it does happen from time to time, even with most of the towns being built out. You know, just like in our city, our sewer system doesn't get to every house even still. We still have a handful of septic systems, and we have that situation as you reach, I think, municipal boundaries. It's just natural that neither cities or towns' lines get that far, at least all at once. So I don't see any issue with this. It helps. You know, the plant is largely fixed cost operation, so I think if anything, this helps benefit us.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Manager, I guess just a simple question. Why are we doing this? I know there's no services. Are there any other homes or any other residences up in that particular area? Is everybody else on septic? They have wells, or?
I believe it's just, they need to provide sewer for these properties in order to have them be, the lots be buildable.
Why aren't they, I guess my question is, how come they're not, if there are other homes up off 18th Street, why are they not going with the well or septic systems similar to probably others that are out there?
My recollection, and it's been a while, it's been about, as I say, about 6 weeks or thereabouts since I've seen this before it came through tonight. My recollection is that the lots are such that they won't support a septic system, but they would, you know, they could be built out with the sewer. I can check on that and get you something on that, but that's my recollection of that
just out of curiosity, what is the tie-in fee to the city now? Are they going to be required to tie in?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but there will be a fee charged to them to do that.
Right. Just going back to Council Murphy's question on billing. So the town of Drake, do we want to? I mean, do we do this with the other 200 and some odd properties where the town's billing? I mean, do we want to get into? I know we don't want to make this a standard practice, but do we want to be chasing or making? How are we going to make sure that the town of Drake is collecting that money? Because right now, when we send out water and receive the wastewater, it's through the town, correct?
We send the bill to the town, and that's essentially what will be done here.
But they do the metering, don't they? Or is this going to tie into the town's water and sewer line?
I believe there is a meter set up on this that they'll be able to check that for us. They'll have their own water meter that comes through there to check the water, and then we bill according to that water usage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? What's the wish of the council? Motion to approve by Council Broderick, seconded by Councilor Dakota. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. In City Council order, renaming Street C, Street D, and a portion of Revere Street in the city of Lowell as Canal Street. Whereas pursuant to City Code Section 243-6, the City Council has the authority to name and to change the name of streets in the city of Lowell. And whereas it is commonly referred to as Street C, Street D, and a portion of Revere Street from Middlesex to Jackson Street in the Hamilton Canal District, the name change is more appropriate for the major new street running through the Hamilton Canal District, given the district spanning of the historic Hamilton, Pawtucket, and Merrimack canals, and the city desires to rename the streets to Canal Street. Now therefore, it is ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell that the city shall take appropriate action to rename Street C, Street D, and a portion of Revere Street in the City of Lowell as Canal Street as herein described on Appendix A and as shown on Appendix B attached hereto and made a part hereof. Second reading by title. In City Council order renaming Street C, Street D, and a portion of Revere Street in the City of Lowell as Canal Street. The wish of the council.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor
just one question through you to the manager. Are there any residents living on those streets at all?
No, there are not.
No residents, so we don't have to inform them about the mayor, okay.
Right.
I move for approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Mendonça. Question?
Yeah, it just, I'm looking at the configuration of these streets, and I'm not opposed to renaming the streets. It just seems to me, looking at it, that it should be like two different street names, because we have kind of a T on these streets, and I'm just wondering if that would be possible, because it seems to make more sense to me. It would be confusing to people later using these streets when part of the street goes straight and part of it makes a right. It seems like it would make more sense if they came up with another name and made them two street names of their choice, as far as I'm concerned.
If I could have Mr. Bakey, perhaps.
Sure, I think what doesn't come across as clear on the subdivision plan that is what's before you as the attachment is that the actual build-out of the street won't be exactly the same as the right-of-way that's shown. The portion of the right-of-way for Street C that looks like it sort of makes a T by traveling a little bit to the north of where Street D turns off will actually be only for pedestrians and trolleys and will not actually be part of the traveled way for vehicles. The traveled way for vehicles that will get built and has been approved by the council under the form-based code and by the planning board under the subdivision approval, the actual street that will get built will be a single street that nothing turns off of for this entire path, which is why the developers of the Hamilton Canal are requesting and proposing the single name for this street here.
Thank you.
It was confusing. It did look like a T. It looked like two streets, but I understand.
Right. Thank you.
Good question there, Joe.
Any further discussions, questions? We have a motion on the floor, second. Roll call. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Martin.
I can't believe we don't have a Canal Street in this city already.
I know, that's right. It's hard to believe. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Moving on with the agenda, under reports, subcommittee reports. I don't believe we have any subcommittee reports, but I did leave on my colleague's desk this evening my recommendations for subcommittee assignments, so please take a look at those. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did see that the subcommittee appointments, and I just wanted to let folks and maybe members of the subcommittee know that I'll be calling a meeting maybe next Tuesday before the city council meeting relative to some issues that have been referred, property valuation. That we'd like to hear it sooner rather than later, because the deadline for submitting an abatement for property owners is February 1st. I think it was Councilor Broderick's motion. Councilor, I don't know if you want to speak on it, but we'll do it next Tuesday, Mr. Manager and Mr. Moses, if that's suitable, in order to get things moving, knowing that deadline is looming.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you for getting this to us and the effort you put together into condensing the number of subcommittees, so we have 4 fewer, and I'm pleased with your selections as to how you combine them. Makes a lot of logical sense, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually was going to say, I am going to say the same thing. Good job getting it to us right away. We have the finance subcommittee we have to get at on the valuations and taxes, and I do appreciate your consolidating, as we probably all do, consolidating a number of these subcommittees so that we can have maybe more concerted effort. Thank you.
The clerk just informed me, again, if there's no opposition to the assignments as presented, we can actually make them tonight. So
move.
So moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. And I want to thank my colleagues for your input into the assignments as well. I think it was a good exercise, a smooth process, and I certainly appreciate everybody's input.
Mr. Mayor, I know that's not an easy task, and you did it well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a petition. We We have a petition from Flood Law Office representing petitioners requesting to withdraw petition to rezone 45, 66, and 80 Willard Street. I have a letter from Attorney Flood addressed to Mr. Johnson, City Clerk. I'm writing this letter for the original petitioners in the above referenced matter. The purpose of the letter is to request that the petition for rezoning be withdrawn. The parties are no longer desirous in proceeding further based on comments and concerns of abutters expressed at the Planning Board meeting held on January 4th, 2010. I appreciate it if you would present this letter to the City Council for further action. Very truly yours, James W. Flood, Jr.
So moved.
To grant the request to withdraw.
Request withdrawn. Motion by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Rita Mercia. This does require a roll call. Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
I do have a discussion.
Yes, I'm sorry, Councilor Mercia.
I want to thank Attorney Flood for doing this. I did attend that planning board meeting, and he did listen to the residents, and he complied with their wishes. He's an upstanding gentleman. Thank you very much. I appreciate that because...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said, thank you. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. We have another petition from Deolinda Betancourt, requests to move the handicap sign from 507 Central Street to 4 Agawam Street. Motion by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Broderick to refer to the traffic engineer for report and recommendation. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor, how long would this take? Would we have to wait for the quarterly report to come forward? Is there a way we could make this a 60-day trial to get this there as soon as possible?
Yeah, Mr. Bakey?
What we typically try to do with the handicap permits, if it's the wish of the council, is bring forward a 60-day trial order that will
Yes.
carry us until the next quarterly traffic ordinance.
That'd be fine.
We try to limit the ordinances to quarterly because of the advertising and public hearing requirements and everything associated with them. But we do the orders in the interim, so we can get the
But
signs
I'm
up
just
quickly.
thinking if I were that handicapped person and I move from one place to another, I rely on myself to be in front of my property or whatever, and if this person happened to do that, I like to get it there as soon as possible. So-
Absolutely.
so
Well, we'll
thank you.
send the engineer out to take a look at it, and assuming there's no
Okay,
problems, we'll get
thank
moving
you.
quickly.
Thank you. All those in favor of referring this to the traffic engineer, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, to vote, thank you. We have 3 motions this evening. The first motion by Councilor Murphy. City Council requests the city manager report on the potential of implementing a variant of the cost-saving City Stat model program in the city of Lowell. Second by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Murphy.
I guess I'll just start by sort of explaining what the City Stat program is. It's really just a name for, it's not, a computer program. It's just a kind of a brand name for a data analysis and performance management program. It's really more of an approach to government, collecting data, analyzing data, coming up with creative solutions based upon the data that's received and following up, continuously improving how government works here in the city. And I think it first started in New York under the police department, and the actual Lowell Police Department has really done quite a bit with the data management and continuously making improvements there. They still continue to add to that program with the recent GIS mapping and really making sure that limited resources are focused in on problem areas. Other examples have been Baltimore's City Stat program, which in its first 7 years saved that city $350 million. A more local and more, I think, comparable example is Somerville, Massachusetts, which in its first 3 years was able to save the city $10 million under, I think, a $170 million budget, so quite a bit less than what we have. I think this program does provide an opportunity to really find some cost savings here as we approach some very difficult budgets in the next few years to achieve greater gains in efficiency. And if we start small with this program, those gains that we achieve can be then parlayed into an expansion, I think, of this program. But of course, this is going to require probably, some report on the potential of doing this, on what votes need to be, taken to put this kind of infrastructure in place. A lot of this statistics available are still out there, but it's just a matter of organizing it and making it more a part of, I think, the culture here in Lowell. And it could, we talked earlier about the snow and ice removal budget, about coming up with a number, projected number that is closer to the actual spending. If we had such a program in place, we could actually begin to look at how we can reduce the actual number to come in more in line with what we project as the expenditure, by focusing in on problem areas, rearranging perhaps certain routes. There's a number of ways that we can use the data that's already available to us that I think would result in quite a bit of savings. And, it could start through the Inspectional Services Department, where Councilman Donza raised the motion last week. That might be a place to begin with, tracking the amount of permits taken out, tracking the amount of inspections conducted daily, and this sort of thing, so that we do have more efficient and effective government. So I look forward to your report on, the capability of potential, really, of being able to put this in place here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just respond briefly to the councilor, and I look forward to the opportunity to get a more detailed report in response. This is something that we have initiated, and that was very, I must commend you on the sort of the history of the STAT program. You gave a very good history of how it began with CompStat in New York and then moved to Baltimore. And there is a very active group actually in Massachusetts, and Lowell is a part of it, MassStat effort that brings in a number of communities, including Somerville, Amesbury, Springfield has done it, and Lowell has been a regular participant in that as we sort of look at ways that we can measure our performance. It was an area that the former assistant to the city manager spent quite a bit of time working on and was a regular participant in those efforts. And we did do some preliminary work in a number of different areas. We had some interns that we brought in from UMass Lowell to work with us, and we actually have a couple of interns right now from the RESD program at UMass Lowell that are working on some of that, particularly as a management tool, and also as a way to tie in performance measurement into our budget document that we provide to the council. And I'm very pleased that you've brought this forward, because I think it is a real opportunity for the city to achieve some cost savings and also achieve more effective government. And I am anxious to restart that effort. It does require some resources. I know that the city of Somerville allocates 4 staff people, separate staff people to this effort. So there is money that has to be expended to get it up and running and used. I'm hopeful that we can find ways to get through that with perhaps less staff people. It's hard sometimes to make the case that we need to spend money to save money, but oftentimes that is, in fact, what needs to be done. I'm very, again, I'm very pleased that you've brought this forward, because I think it is a real opportunity for the city and one that we really need to continue moving forward on. And even though we had to put it somewhat on hold, we've continued to work at efforts, and we've maintained our contacts in the MassStat network. And in fact, there'll be some meetings coming up in the next month that we'll be attending on that. But Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Councilor Martin, then Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support this motion. I was pleased to see it filed. I know we had started down this path, on a response to a motion I filed maybe years ago now, and I know Mr. Sheehan had been actively engaged in this. I wasn't aware that we had interns that we're still relying on services for, so that's good to hear. But Councilor Murphy's right. I think we need to always be looking at ways where we could do things better and more efficiently, and we have made big investments in technology in the last few years. You know, the GIS programs and things give us capabilities that we didn't have only a few short years ago, and certainly other cities have made this work. Councilor Murphy mentioned something, but even here in Lowell, we've seen the benefit, I think, of these types of things with our police department. You know, if you look at, the data that's gathered in the police department, the way they use that data to attract grant money. If you saw the report, from 5th District Day and the presentations that the local police department made based on these models and data that it generated, and the response to that data, for effective law enforcement, enabled us to keep our officers on the street this year. We wouldn't have been able to do that, I'm convinced, without having had that infrastructure in place to generate those reports and show how law enforcement personnel were being deployed. And there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to do the same or similar things with our code inspectors, with all other types of services that the city provides. So I think it's a good motion. Certainly plan to support it, and look forward to what you're able to bring back to us, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to commend Councilor Murphy for bringing this motion forward. I just have one question. Would this be a private firm that would come into City Hall, or would you implement this program, Mr. Manager?
Right. This is something that we were working on, and it would be done really through existing staff. I mean, I'm sure that there are consulting groups out there that could probably do it, but there's quite a bit of information in the network that exists in the state, ways to do this type of measurement of performance, and that we would do it internally.
Okay. Good motion.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. I too think it's a good motion. I'm obviously going to support it. I think it is, many of us preached during the campaign, we have to try and do more with less, and the best way to do that is more efficient use of our resources. I was hoping you were going to tell us that we've had someone working on this since Mr. Sheehan departed, but at least we've had some interns. I think it's imperative that we get on the ball with this. And as part of the report, I assume you'll come back to us with suggestions, or maybe what other cities and towns are doing and the expected savings. I think that I agree. You have to spend money to save money. Sometimes we did it with the trash removal. We had to lay some money out to change the system, but in the long run or short term, I think in that situation. But certainly in the long run, we'll save money with it. I think it's important that we get started as soon as we can, and hopefully, if you could let us know what you anticipate, as far as needs are.
Mr. Manager, then Councilor Murphy.
Okay. I was just the comment I was going to make is, generally speaking, the STAT program is something that's used very effectively as an internal tool for management, and it becomes very helpful as the manager and department heads work to look at the information and analyze the information and discuss, what it all means and the changes that can take place. But I mentioned that we're using it too to meld in with the budget. I think it's a very useful tool on an annual basis to include within the budget to understand what's being achieved with the dollars being spent. But I also think it has some real potential to, as a tool to bring information to the council on a regular basis on what the city government is achieving and what we're finding is, just as the police will come in with different crime statistics, we'll be able to come in with, once fully implemented, we'll be able to come in with information on, how many inspections are taking place, and it's much more detailed than that. Otherwise, we already know how many inspections we do, or one would hope we do. But it's the backup to that, and the really drilling down into the data and the information that really you find the savings and you find the efficiencies.
Councilor Murphy.
Just in response to Councilor Caulfield's question, the data in a lot of these statistics are already in place. We already know what they are. But I think the expense would be, and the most important part of this program would be the analysts themselves, where you actually have people evaluating the data and coming up with solutions, and then going back to the department heads to make those reforms within the department. And so the key piece of it, I think, is the human element here. We have data available to us. It's how it's used. And so I think there's an opportunity to really, if we know there are certain problems in city government, that we focus in on those to begin with, because that's the most cost-effective approach. And that with those realized savings, then we can begin to expand the program into something larger. Where we have the opportunity to do that, I think there are two pieces really to this program. One is the internal piece as a management tool, and the other that I think Somerville is just beginning in its first stages is using that data and making broader policy decisions. And so that has then come as a result, I think, of the savings that have already been realized in the program. So I hope that somewhat answers the question.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Councilman Donka. City Council requests the city manager to establish a neighborhood improvement advisory committee comprised of representatives of the existing neighborhood groups and other stakeholders the manager deems appropriate to identify and prioritize issues that can be addressed under existing city ordinances and resources. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Councilman Donka.
Thank you. I'm a high-tech guy, but this is kind of a low-tech way until we can get to Councilor Murphy's motion of having statistics available online. And this is certainly something that the city manager could do of his own accord, and he has done it before to bring together the neighborhood leaders, and out of it came the Centerville Neighborhood Initiative. And I've seen a request from one of the neighborhood leaders to bring that group together again. I've talked to some other neighborhood leaders about issues they're seeing, and I think this would be good to have them meet on a regular basis and bring forth the issues that they see in their neighborhood. And from what I've heard so far, a lot of the things is a matter of enforcement of our existing codes. But this, because of our shortage of resources to some extent, as over the last couple of budget cycles and probably going forward, I think it would be a good resource to utilize, and it would be mutually beneficial to the city and to these neighborhood groups for them to bring forth their issues and work at them together to give us kind of like a top 10 list of what they see as really important issues, and then provide it to the administration so that the administration can tackle those as they are able. And this might be something that doesn't have to be a permanent committee, but maybe for the term of this council, and then hopefully other things will be put in place that can address some of these things. I know a couple of years ago, we had the complaint system that they could go on the website, put in their complaint, and they'd get status updates. But it seems like since the cut in resources that we had recently, that status part is not happening like it did before. It's possibly people are busy, but this might be a way for them to highlight what they feel is important. Some of the things, I mean, are like, shopping carts where they shouldn't be, sneakers hanging on poles, when street sweeping occurs, if there's some way to organize that better, dealing with absentee landlords and minimum maintenance standards, dealing with the foreclosed properties and the minimum standards there. Signs people put up on the electric poles or telephone poles, whatever you want to call them, for maybe a yard sale, maybe for they want to offer painting services, but those aren't supposed to be there. I don't mind someone putting up a yard sale sign this weekend, but if they go back and take it down, please, things like that. And often there are phone numbers there that you can just call up and tell them, hey, come get your sign. It shouldn't be here. But these are, they seem like simple things. There's also things related to trash being left out too long, and things of that nature that I think as we move forward as a council, we want to be dealing with issues of economic development. And we don't want these people coming into our city and seeing that it's a trashy city. We want them to go back to a report that they found a clean city, that's a good place. Because usually when you visit somewhere else, that's the first thing you notice is if it's not clean. And oftentimes people come back from visiting other cities and they will remark about how clean they found it as a compliment. They seem worthy. So that's why I made the motion. And again, the city manager could certainly have done this on his own, but I'd appreciate council support on this to show support going forward.
Thank you. Council Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with this committee. I'd like to add a little bit of my thoughts. As far as the committee goes, some years ago, we had some sort of a group of all the neighborhood leaders that had their meetings, and somehow we, as a council, were not invited to that, because I asked many times, what are you discussing there? I want to know what's going on, but we were not allowed to be involved with that. I like to, after you establish the committee that you're going to, and I wish that it was comprised of all the neighborhood leaders and not just to choose this group leader and that one, but not you, or maybe not you, but to include all the neighborhood leaders, and then in 6 months have what you'd call a neighborhood summit and invite the council to see what do you think about what just took place within 6 months. Has it improved somewhat? Do you still have concerns? That's what I like to see. If you could put that in there somehow, that'd be good. We'd get a report on it through a summit by meeting with them to see firsthand how they feel about it, because this is a very important issue. We have neighborhood group leaders that don't request a dime, and they put in so much of their time for the improvement of their little piece of the rock, their little world in their neighborhood, and they make the city better by joining forces. So this is a good motion, and I like to see results, or at least a report in 6 months by a summit to see how did you like what took place? Did you get your things addressed, your issues resolved? I think this is good.
Thank you. Manager Lynch?
If I may, and again, assuming this passes, which I assume it will, I think it's a very good motion that ties in well with what we've been trying to do with the neighborhood organizations. We have a very active participation with our police department and our planning and development, neighborhood services coordinator, meeting with the neighborhood organizations on a monthly basis. As everyone knows, we kicked off the Neighborhood Initiative program this year, focusing in on, over the course of the next 5 years, 5 of the neighborhoods that are in most need of attention based upon statistics and data that we have. I did, as Councilor Mendonça mentioned, I did call together all the neighborhood organization presidents last year and it's our intention to do that on a regular basis, which ties in nicely with this motion. So what I'll do in my report is sort of outline some of that, as well as what our plans are moving forward, because I do think that I was sort of surprised when meeting with neighborhood presidents last summer that, in fact, they claimed that it never had been done before, that everyone brought together. And I do think there's real value in the neighborhood organizations meeting and talking about shared concerns and doing that on a regular basis, quarterly or otherwise, and then coming out of that some type of summit or report on that. So I think it has some real value. I just want to, Councilman Johnson mentioned the eGov, which was our attempt at a sort of a computerized 311 center, if you will, 24-hour service that people could log in. And that allows us to track complaints, but it also allows us to gather data on what the concerns are, what the issues are, which ties in very well with the city staff program that we just talked about. So that was the point of that a couple of years ago when we did it. But you're right, it has fallen. Again, it's with the staffing changes in the city manager's office, that has fallen by the wayside a little bit. But again, we're hoping to get that up back and running in the very near future.
Councilman Mendoza?
Yes, to Council Mercier's point, I had intended that all the neighborhood groups that are organized would be invited to send a representative, most likely their chair or president, but if not, they would choose who they want. The other stakeholders I was considering, and I'll leave that up to the manager, is people like the National Park or the university as far as the areas around Middlesex Community College, maybe Keep Lowell Beautiful, things like that. So any other stakeholders. And of course, I would like to compliment our Division of Neighborhood Services, Mike Damaris. I mean, you get nothing but, you hear nothing but good things from the neighborhood groups about the work he's done, and he's always very prompt in addressing their issues. But he's going to each neighborhood group and bring them back and doing the best he can to address those. And this would just bring them all together in one room occasionally so that they could understand each other's issues and be able to prioritize them and understand why maybe something else is being done ahead of their issue, that they've actually agreed that that's more important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote, thank you. The last motion of the evening, unanswered, non-responsive motions. Councilor Mercier requests manager have state reset traffic lights at Highland Street near Superior Court. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. We did receive a report.
Yes, we did.
I'll defer to
See,
Councilor
you know, I
Mercier.
made the motion in quick response. I did
Correct.
receive a response, but it entailed we're talking about traffic and calming and things like that, and this is a motion that addresses congestion and backlog of people coming off of the connector, going to the next set of lights, which happens to be Highland Street on one side, Elm Street on the other, right by the courthouse. And the light stays green for such a short time, where Elm and Highland, where there's hardly any traffic, it stays longer. And it's only a matter of reversing the role and adding probably 30 seconds within a certain time frame from probably 3 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, so that the traffic can keep moving. And that's sometimes the simple thing, is to reset the timer so that the light stays longer on the side of on this portion of the street that has the most traffic. Coming off of the connector, it would be Gorham Street. And so I did bring the motion up before. I know that we did get a response and a recommendation from the planning department. I know that they're talking about reconfiguring it during the Hamilton Canal process from one point to another, but I can't wait for 6 months. I'd like to get it done as soon as possible, and that's what I'm asking for. Just for example, at Gallagher Square, we have a reconfiguration of the roadway, but yet the lights are still blinking there, and I'm thinking, when are they actually going to activate them and make them work? I mean, I know that there's a process in place, but it seems, again, that it's taken a long time to do this, and I don't know how come. I know it's a state road. I know it isn't a matter of getting the city electrical department up there, and it isn't our domain. It's a state road. But I mean, if it would move the traffic along in a calming manner, instead of just letting that that word, I wanted to say cluster, but I didn't want to go there. But anyways, so that's what I was saying, if we could just address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need to take any action on the motion since it was actually responded to at this particular point, or just all those in favor of?
That's right.
Motion
All
is
those in
represented,
favor signify
Accept
by
the
saying aye.
communication.
Correct, accept the communication. All those in favor? Aye, opposed? Thank you. Any other items? Yes, Councilor
Before
Costello.
we adjourn, Mr. Mayor, I've been in the building during winters and so forth. In certain sections of this building, people have to open the windows because there's too much heat. In the council chambers, it's really cold. So, Mr. Manager, if you can take a look at some heating experts or have them come in and find out what's wrong with the heating system. My poor colleague here has her coat on, and Councilor Mercier has her coat on, and it is, I don't know what the temperature in here is, but it's kind of chilly. So I know there's many problems facing you, Mr. Manager, but this is one we'd like to see addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn by Councilman Don, oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Donson.
Just since we're talking of cold, and I hope no one objects, is just to, we just publicize that we have Winterfest coming up.
Correct,
It's
February 1st
first
and
weekend,
6th.
February, and if the mayor wants to take it from there, that's fine.
No, that's fine.
So we certainly welcome to have everyone come downtown, help our businesses. There's lots of activities going on. I'm sure it's on our website. They can learn more about it.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Dakota. All those in favor? Votes vote. Thank you very much.